Okay, so, but you didn't want to, and Dennis wanted to, and he picked about $20 worth of cotton. And you, I'm sure, picked much more.
Yeah.
You knew how to pick cotton. I remember you were like a locomotive going down there with that enormous sack going. Do you remember what I'm talking about? How long? Because to this day, I'm impressed with how long this sack was. And then whenever, of course, me, this little kid, they had me this little gunny sack, which I couldn't fill.
Did a lot of things together. I don't think.
That was pretty good cotton pick.
Yeah, you just carried your sack right with you as you went down the road. Kind of dragging behind, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. You know,
Sorry, what?
see, there's a memory. I had it, but I had no context for it.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't know, when I got scared going to see the House of Wax, I didn't know that was in New Mexico. I just know that it terrified me. To this day, I can still remember, and she's there, and you're going to make her into wax, and oh boy, I had nightmares on that one. I just had nightmares on that one. That was terrible. Is that where you and Dennis went to see that 3D thing where you put on the glasses at that same theater in Tularosa? Because I remember you guys.
Yeah, yeah. It sure was.
What do you remember what film that was?
And good people,
No.
they went with us often and said they moved to.
What else about Tularosa?
Well,
Then they moved out to Joshua.
But what if you can't think of anything else? Let's talk about how long did we stay in the white frame house?
but
Visiting with
say
us.
about
She's gone with us to a couple of
3 months after you painted it and got it all fixed up.
You wanted to raise the...
We went to the other place. The other place was so warm and so nice.
Okay, now the other place was an old adobe.
And it was warm, man. Just at least a little heat and give that place was warm.
You remember it was warm and nice. Now, what else about the old adobe place?
And the wind had a windstorm and you didn't even know there was one outside.
in talking.
And the other house, you flat knew there's a windstorm.
They have quite a bit of wind around Tularosa.
Yeah,
The other place was hard to heat. Is that part of the
Yeah.
problem? And you left the white frame house because it was hard to heat, because the wind made such a difference, and
yeah.
that's it. Any other reasons?
That's the only one I think I can remember.
How far were the two places from each other? Do you remember any addresses or street names?
No, but I would say it was about quarter, maybe almost a quarter mile apart. One is on the west end, the other's on the east end over by the school. And we had you kids closer to school too.
Now, I didn't actually start there. I started in Edwards, yeah.
Dennis closer to school.
You know, I remember going to that school one time with Mom. We were in the office, and in the office they had a trophy case. And in the trophy case they had old football helmets that looked like, you know, the old football helmets. And they had old footballs with dates on them and scores. And I remember sitting there while she was talking to the people at the school about whatever her business was. And I remember looking at that trophy case and just seeing all those old sports things, you know, baseballs and trophies. And you know how trophy cases look like. And I still, what a silly memory to have after 50 years, you know, because you have to realize that if I was just, we left there about something like April of '54. Well, in April of '54, I was 5 years old, not even 5.5 yet. But I've got this memory of the House of Wax. I got the memory of the cotton. I got the memory of, you know, of that trophy case down at that school where Dennis went to school. But I wasn't going to school. Okay, what about the adobe? 2-room, 4-room, 3-room?
And
What was the adobe exposed in any way?
outside,
It was- So outside it looked like an adobe.
there's the adobe house.
See that I didn't I can't remember the front of the house.
But
Was it the adobe where the ditches were and the grove of trees and the couch and the?
Yeah,
That's funny because I don't remember the outside of the house. I remember the ditches. I remember the trees. I remember the outside, and I remember Mom used to take a nap, and Bobby and I. We were supposed to take a nap with her, and she'd go to sleep. I'd wake up Bobby. I'd go get I couldn't reach the key on the refrigerator, but Bobby could. I'd have him get the key. We'd go out, and I'd play with next to those irrigation ditches. I couldn't swim a lick. And then I remember one time while she was sleeping, marshmallows used to be Campfire brand, and they used to come in a box, and they were in rows, like 6 on the top, and then there was a thing, and then there was 6 on. Remember one time while she was sleeping, we were eating those marshmallows, and I remember playing around those irrigation ditches while she was sleeping. And I'd play about as long as I thought Mom would sleep, and then we'd go back in, and I'd have Bobby put the key back on top, and we'd go back in. I probably did that 3 times. I remember doing that. I also remember your room, going into your room, it's almost like you stepped down into it.
Yeah, I did.
And it was almost cavernous. It was almost cave-like. It was,
yeah,
I remember that. But the front, I just don't remember. So it was like a brown adobe.
yeah.
Yeah, see, why do I remember the inside of the house, the yard, the ditches, the trees, the couch, eating those marshmallows, getting that key, and I can't remember what the house looked like, and Dennis does, because he's 3 years older. But it was an adobe.
Yeah, Adobe.
Brown?
Well, kinda. We had it painted white inside.
Now, was the adobe wall, was it exposed inside too?
No, it was just,
It was adobe, just adobe brick, and we just painted the inside
it
white,
was painted. It was smooth and painted.
smoothed and painted. Uh-huh,
And it was just as warm as toast.
uh-huh. So you really liked that house?
We both did. We all did.
Mhm.
We were much more comfortable there than we were that other house.
Uh-huh.
And it was a lot cheaper, about half the price.
Well, you know, it sounds just off the top, yeah, we lived in an adobe house, that sounds primitive, you know.
But it wasn't primitive, it was, man, if I had lots of money and could afford it, I would want to build a good adobe house.
So you'd still like to live in a good adobe house?
Yeah. I remember Dennis had a few fights.
Mm-hmm. And?
And he won them.
You know, Dennis didn't get into sports, but that guy was never a sissy. Dennis was never a sissy.
No, he wasn't.
It just wasn't his interest.
Yeah. And he flat held it on in the fights.
Oh yeah. Well, remember when he beat up the Zeno brothers? Chafee? Woo! Bullies of the school. Beat up one, then he beat up the other. Yeah. You know, I wonder, I've often wondered if he had not, when he was playing, he was a catcher for the Oaks, Little League. And I think he enjoyed it. If he had not had that hernia and had to quit and not play, and then of course for a period of time he couldn't play, if he might have had an interest in sports, because he was always well coordinated. You know, we played football on the front lawn, and you know, the rest of us did play sports, and he just fit right in. He was just as tough as anybody. Remember him walking on his hands?
Yeah.
Remember how well developed his upper body was?
Yeah.
That was one strong character. But this isn't about him. But he had a few fights and he won them. Okay. What were the fights over? Anything?
New boy in the block. And they were going to whip him, but nobody ever did as far as I ever could tell.
Okay, what else about New Mexico? Socially, who are your friends?
I didn't associate with anybody. I went to work from home to work, and I rode in a carpool with a bunch of people who were commuting, and they were really good people. Really liked them, and they liked me. But I never made many friends socially at the base. I just worked with them. But I liked them and they liked me.
So what'd you do for recreation in a place like New Mexico, particularly Tularosa, New Mexico? Went to the movies.
I went to White Sands.
Okay, I remember going to White Sands. I've even seen pictures of us at White Sands. Did we do that more than once?
Oh yeah, you guys loved it.
And we went, would you say numerous times, several
Yeah.
times?
Yeah, several times.
Uh-huh. Several times. Okay, so we went to White Sands several times. We'd play in the sands, picnics or whatever.
Yeah, we took picnic lunches.
While I'm thinking about this, cars. What was the first car you ever owned?
First car I ever owned was a Model T Ford. I
Year?
bought it from Morris, 1924, and I bought it from Morris Callahan.
What year did you buy it?
About 1929 or 30.
Now, you bought it from Morris Callahan,
Yeah,
and it was a 24 Ford. You bought it about 1929 or 30.
maybe 28.
1928. Now, that's the one that your family had.
No, that was mine.
1918, 1920.
They had
You owned a car when you were 10?
39.
Okay, so it was a 24 Model T, but you bought it in 1939.
Yeah,
Okay, and tell me about it.
run good. Morris was a mechanic, you know.
Oh,
And he had that thing in top shape. I could go anywhere in it.
okay, next car.
Next car I owned was a 28 Model A.
And when did you buy that?
Do you know, Rite Aid has,
Were you already married?
Make this here about 38. But I bought that about a year later or so.
What happened to the Model T?
I have to sold it. Sold it to the Hutchins. Stepped up to where but,
So your Model A was better.
oh yeah.
And so your 1928 Model A that you bought in 39, who'd you buy that from? Oh, yeah,
Both sides of it.
please. Take, if you can't get it all in one shot, make it in sections, but make sure I get everything.
That's not big as
Because see, that's all the dates and things.
That's not bigger than right now.
That
I love when
histories are so much better if you can say when something happened.
See, that's not bigger than this.
Where did I
Should be in trouble. I know, I'm not right in the camera. I don't care.
I can't even remember.
Dealer maybe?
No,
Okay, and then how long did you have that?
about a year.
And you sold it when you went to CCC?
Sold it to Uncle Luther.
Luther Crab?
Luther Crab. Not long after that, so I left Oklahoma.
Now let's see, not long after that you left Oklahoma. Is that when you went to Plainview?
Plainview.
So Plainview. Now you got into Plainview. You know, the last time I wrote the history, I had to detail just how awful those carcasses you loaded on those box cars were.
Oh, I was,
Now there's one line. You know, I wrote this and then my computer dumped before I made a paper copy.
well, these were carcasses out of butcher shops after they had completely sold all the meat. And the bones were brought out in a big truck, and I took the bones and put them on boxcars. And man, the Berkson smelled like a garbage heap at the end of every day. But it was a steady job, and I needed money, and I worked.
Mm-hmm. Now that more than anything else got you to really want to get to the military or something.
Yeah.
Now, didn't that assaying office, didn't that come through like
Yeah.
about it? You had signed up in the military May 28th, and about just a week later or a month later.
I got a notice, Michael Newton sent it to me, and Fort Ord that I had been called to go to anyway, it was West Texas.
Near Plainview?
No, it was there where
Amarillo, maybe up there.
it was kind of closer to Lubbock.
Uh-huh.
I know you go through them oil fields.
No, I'm calling it an assay, but it's a trust deed sort of. It's called a. What was that company? What was it?
Abstract.
Abstracting, yeah.
Abstract.
Do abstracting, and of course there was nothing you could do.
Oh,
Would you have left the military to go to do abstracting?
if I could have, I would
Yeah,
have.
yeah. That's what I'm trying to find out. Did you think, well, oh no, I've got this, I love it, or golly, darn?
Well, let me tell you what happened.
What am I hearing?
I went down to the club and I had a few beers that night. Kind of feeling low. And on the way home, I pitched a cigarette in the sand dunes. And the master sergeant told me to pick up that cigarette.
Is that where you had to give it a burial?
I told him that I was through with that cigarette. If he wanted it, he could be my guest.
Was it Master Sergeant?
Yeah. And they took me to my company and turned me over. And they made me pick up every cigarette butt in that whole area, dig a hole and give them the last rite and bury it. But then they read me the Article of War. When they read me the Article of War and told me what I had done, I could have been given 6 months. And even a bad discharge for insubordination. I almost had a heart attack.
You were so new you didn't know it.
I had never heard the Article of War.
Well, how long had you been there?
2 days. But very shortly after that, I heard the Article of War and I almost fainted. And I've been a good boy ever since.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I remember you'd say you had to give him a funeral, so you had to give him the last rites, huh?
Yeah. From the coal company. It turned out for the last rites. I'm gonna sit here, I can talk to you just good and comfortable there.
You know what? I'm gonna come over and sit on the couch.
Okay?
You know, it's funny. That's a story that should be in here after the last rites to those cigarettes. But until we got to talking about this, I never thought. Oh, we got a camera. Danny? Oh. Well. See, this was he had this aimed at you and on. So I'm gonna see if I'm getting you or not, I don't know. Well, you know what? I'll assume I'm getting you. Because I don't want to spend a half hour getting that just exactly right. If I can spend a half hour talking to you instead. And I figure you got to be somewhere in the picture, right?
Put it on that magazine.
Magazines probably would be better. It's got to face up, or it won't get you.
That'll get me right there. A
Okay,
little bit more over this way.
like that.
No, the other way. A little more. A little more over this way. Not down.
Well, it fell off the books. That's what happens when you got help that leaves. Now I'm dropping your books on the floor.
That'll get me.
Well, I think it'll get your feet. Well, I'm trying to get my son, rather than staying here and filming him like I asked him to do, just set the, do you think that'll do it?
No, it needs over. Oh, the front.
What?
The front comes over to the left. The
Like
other
that?
way. Front the other way. A little bit more.
Well, that's not
That'll-
getting
that'll do
you.
it. That'll
That's
do it.
right there.
Okay.
I think it's missing. I'm gonna take
Can
a
you get
chance.
down on your knees and
I'm gonna.
take a look?
My son.
Does it need to be up higher?
No, actually, it's now perfect. It's now perfect.
Okay.
That's what I should have done in the first place. Got down there and looked. But that's what I didn't want to do, is spend the time adjusting. I wanted him to be here, helping me out. Okay. Okay. I haven't even gotten through Dennis's stuff yet. When we were in New Mexico, we attended church in a women's club.
Oh, my Lord.
Tell me about it.
Well,
Did you go very often with Mom to church?
every Sunday. We got to know the Haight. Elder Haight was the guy that baptized me.
H-A-I-G-H-T?
I think it's on there somewhere.
Well, I've got your baptismal record in there.
Yeah.
And tell me about it. Dennis, it was time for Dennis to be baptized, so the bishop comes over and says, "What about you?"
Yeah.
And you said,
I said, well, first I said I'd have to think about it. So he wanted to, he said, take a little time, think about it. And old Dennis put a lot of pressure on me. And I finally said yes. But I don't know if I was really ready or not. I did it more for Dennis and me. But I'm glad I did it.
well, you were ready. You weren't ready necessarily completely, but it was the Lord's will that you were baptized. Because that's when Grandma Campbell appeared to Mother in a dream just before that bishop came over and said something very, very special is about ready to happen. That was going to change your life. You knew that. So, yeah, we got to Edwards and the church was so divided that it was divisive and tough, and it,
But I enjoyed it.
but you were supposed to get baptized when you did. You made the right decision is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made the right decision. You don't get messengers from the other side saying it's the right decision if it's the wrong one. You only get those when it's the wrong one. I mean, you only get those when it's the right one. So it was something that you needed to do at that time. And your bishop obviously was inspired. They didn't have a font, so we had to go out to the Mescalero Apache.
Indian reservation.
Uh-huh.
I was just surrounded by Indian women, and I remember coming up out of the water, and I looked at those Indian women, and I could see love and admiration and respect in every one of those Indian women's eyes.
Uh-huh.
They were loving. So they must, these were members that had become members.
Uh-huh.
And I had a complete different feeling about Indian women that day, or Indians that day. Boy, there's good ones here too, you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, the Lord, you know, the gospel brings about a mighty change. And obviously they had gone through that change and they felt the Spirit. So what you're saying is that the Spirit was very strong at your baptism.
Yeah.
Can I express it in those terms in
Yeah.
history?
I
That the
was,
Spirit was very strong and...
I was impressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've gone to great pains to try to make this be you talking instead of me writing and saying it my way. Dennis felt pretty good about that. He says, yeah, it sounds like Dad. Because that's been on my mind. Let's make this Dad's history of Dad, not Philip's history of Dad. What in the world? Twilight Bike. Oh, I know what. That has nothing to do with the question I need to ask you. Dennis saw the U2 when we were at Patrick. He was riding his bicycle about dusk. He said he imagines that they did not fly that thing during daylight hours when it could be seen. But it was about dusk and it wasn't dark enough where it was totally obscured. He's riding his bike and he sees the strangest plane he ever saw in his life. He says it's got the longest wings. He says they go out forever. And he said there were wheels under those wings. Way out at the end of those wings. And he said, I saw this thing take off and I saw those wheels fall off, and he said, I didn't know what the heck I'd seen. He said it was years before I put together what it was that I'd seen, but he said, I saw it too. And I told him about you saw the U2 in Patrick. He said, I saw it too. I just didn't know I saw it until years later. You know, Dennis and his knowledge of things military in terms of equipment and things.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else about New Mexico? I gotta let Dennis know about Mexico, because New Mexico, because he felt, and he was right. I needed more about it.
We used to go to barbecues out at in a park, and all of the members of the church went out and killed wild pigs, and we barbecued them wild pigs, and we had barbecued wild pig.
We're lucky we didn't get trichinosis or something barbecuing those things up.
But it was good. I mean, they knew what they were doing, and that wild boar was good meat.
Like a pork?
Yeah. And I used to go out with the scouts at the Ellsworth Ranch and camp out at night.
Now, you're talking about the barbecue. The barbecue, is that in New Mexico?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the Ellsworth Ranch.
No, barbecue was, I'm talking about Patrick Airport.
Okay, because when you started talking about the scouts at the Ellsworth Ranch, that was Patrick.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the scouts, because you got them their first charter they ever had.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I was their scoutmaster for a little while, and I used to take them out camping, and we'd camp out at night on the Ellsworth Ranch, and they had streams out there with fish.
I remember we caught about 60 one time.
Well, in the morning, we'd catch them early in the morning. We had it for breakfast.
I remember that. I
Had it
remember
for
that.
breakfast. And we had to make sure that when we slept, they slept in an old building, but they said don't sleep near any brush or any accumulation of trash because that's where the
Coral snakes.
coral snakes could be. So we'd just get as far from anything, any other objects in the building and make our beds. So we wouldn't get bitten by coral snakes.
Remember we had that honey project, and
Yeah, build honeycombs.
yeah, remember they had that big square dance when they completed it, and that little tiny rattlesnake was in the bathroom. The kids, dumb kids, were in there playing with that thing.
Yeah.
And I think Dennis comes out and says, "Hey, there's a rattlesnake in that bathroom." Those kids are playing with it, and you went in. He was just a little guy, but he was, and you stomped on that thing.
Hurt my heel. Hurt my heel. And I was about to, you can crush his head, but you bruise your heel.
Uh-huh.
I had a badly bruised heel.
That's good. Now, I'm going to take you back to New Mexico. There was an old feller, name might have been Roswell, and he lived out in a canyon in a one-room mining shack, and he had a set of boots, and he told the story that Dennis and I both remember, of there was a pair of boots where somebody had been hit by the rattlesnake. He died. Somebody else wore them. They died. Somebody else wore them. Killed 3 different people. Do you remember the man or the story?
Remember the story?
Who told you that story?
Who was that old guy?
Was his name Roswell? He said his name was the same as a city in New Mexico, and it might have been Roswell. Now, I remembered the story, but not the guy.
I remember the old guy.
How did you come to know him?
Oh. Oh, when we went there,
Where? Tell me about where there
we
is.
were looking for a place to live, and he gave us some instructions, and we got to know him, and he even invited us to his house for dinner one time. But he always was friendly when he saw me, but he was just an acquaintance I made that was nice to us, tried to be helpful to us, and was a friend to us all the time that we were there. But just a nice old man.
Mhm.
But that's about all I could remember about him.
Uh-huh. You remember that story, though.
Yeah,
Can I put the story in there?
yeah,
He had those boots, didn't he?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. He had those boots.
And there's a fang, it was a rattlesnake fang.
So, well, that's what killed the 3 men. The rattlesnake fang they put on the boots. Yeah. Which,
Crystal poison in them fangs.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh. You don't remember his name, but we went over to see him a number of times.
Went to his house once.
Did he come to our house a time or two, or?
I stopped by,
Mm-hmm.
say hello.
No, was it when we went to his house for dinner that he told us the story?
Could have been, yeah.
Because I remember the story. You know, I didn't remember this guy at all, and then Dennis told the story. I remember a guy telling that story. I remember that story. I couldn't remember the guy at all, just the story. story.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one that Dennis says I have to ask you, and I says, you know what, he doesn't remember it. But he says, yeah, but maybe this time he'll remember it. He and I both remember this as a kid. I said, well, I'm not putting in a story that Dad doesn't remember because it's his history, not ours. He says, I understand. I'll buy that. You come home, we're in New Mexico. You'd heard a story where some people were talking. They were launching a rocket. As they launched it, a couple of lights went up with it, and it was kind of a big buzz. Now, the reason he and I both remember it, we were both very scared by it. We internalized that. We went and we talked about it, and it wasn't. You told the story, and then we went out in the car somewhere, and he and I didn't know this until years later, we compared notes. I was looking out of the car, expecting little green men to come get us at any time, and so was he. We were both scared half to death. But I says, Dad doesn't remember that. So, do you remember that? You didn't last time I talked with you. You hadn't seen this thing, you just heard the buzz. Well, furthermore, I got one of those books, those flying saucer books, and I looked up all the incidents, and I found it. It's there. It's a documented incident. So we're not imagining it. You just don't remember it. I says, well, if he doesn't remember, I'm not going to put it in there. It's his history, so it's not going in. But he just insisted I ask you again, and in our phone call last night, I said, well, he doesn't remember it. I got to put something in his history that he doesn't remember. It wasn't important to him. It was only important to us. So, but anyway, I promised him. He said, well, ask him again. See if just maybe something will jog his memory. He'll remember that story. He wanted it in here so bad. Because I looked it up. I found it. It happened. It's real. So we're not imagining it. You just don't remember it. But that's okay. You don't have to remember a story that's not important to you. This is your history. Now, when I write mine, I might talk about the day that this happened. But he writes his. Maybe he will. Oh, that fellow that was out in that canyon, he knew or had met the fellow that discovered the Carlsbad Caverns, according to Dennis. Do you remember that element?
Yeah, he did. Talked about him.
Uh-huh. What, do you remember anything he said? But
They said he knew the guy.
Well, I can report to Dennis. I asked him about that. He doesn't remember that. And well, that dispatches that. Carlsbad Caverns, Women's Club for Church, no font, NC. Oh, yeah. Let's go to Japan for a minute. He told me, he says, you mean you can't remember anything more than that from Japan? I says, Dad and I haven't even talked about Japan yet. But he was on me about Japan. You do realize the whole family's in on this history. I mean, everybody's pretty excited. Cheryl's excited. Dennis is excited. Everybody's really, really excited because I don't know why, but they've been expecting me to write it for years. Nobody else can write it, but everybody's pretty excited about it. And so, and what was kind of funny, because I thought when Dennis was talking to you, I thought, oh boy, they're talking about some of this stuff. Nope, I'm leaving that for you. That's funny. Okay, now let's go to Japan. And when we I think it was either the first Christmas or Thanksgiving. We didn't get there till September. You got there around March or April, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
We didn't get there till September. And I remember a meal, and I guess it must have been Thanksgiving, because we were just there shortly, and that would have been November. We actually went to in Shohei, we went to the mess hall for a Thanksgiving dinner, and it was good. They had everything you could want. Kind of mess hall style. You know, I mean, instead of your nuts in a little cup at your table, you dip some nuts into a thing up at the thing as you went by, you know what I'm saying? But I don't remember eating at the mess hall a lot, but I do remember that. You remember that?
Yeah.
Was that Thanksgiving or Christmas?
I think it was Thanksgiving.
Okay. But the thing that Dennis brought up that I have always remembered, we used to go to the NCO club usually on Sunday after church. We used to do that all the time.
And me.
Yeah. And we did that many, many Sundays. And a lot of times we'd go to Tachi West, where you had kind of a sit-down served meal. But occasionally we'd go to Tachi East where they had those ice sculptors and they had a buffet type style.
Yeah.
Talk about it a little bit.
Well, they had these special dinners for families every Sunday. And it really made them nice, and the food was just excellent. And all you had to do is take your family and you paid the family rate. And it was very reasonable. It was probably cheaper than you could have fixed the dinner. But it was only good on Sunday.
Okay, you know, see, Dennis mentioned that last night. He said, he said, he used to always take us out for dinner. He said, now that couldn't have been easy on on a sergeant's pay to do that every Sunday, but it wasn't as tough as he thought. Then it was
It was very reasonable.
yeah. Well, they used to have a floor show. They'd have acrobats, or they'd have magicians, or they'd
Yeah.
always. And they always had. It was nice.
Entertainment.
Always had. Talk about it. I mean, give me your thoughts. I don't want to write it.
Well, it was just in the NCO club, and they had the tables fixed up real nice, and the fee was very nominal and very reasonable. And you had shows and singing and quartets. Just really good entertainment. Some of it was even put on by Japanese people that come in there to the club.
I remember that.
And you had a whole afternoon's entertainment for the price of a dinner that was affordable to even a low-ranking person, and it was really a break for a master sergeant. For non-commissioned officers, it was a real cheap way to eat and good food.
Now, when we went out to Tachi East, did they have that same type of a thing where it was a special Sunday, or did we just do that sometimes on our own? Because I remember going there 3 or 4
But
times.
all the clubs did it.
Oh, all the clubs.
Yeah.
And it was just what we were in the mood for, whether you wanted to eat buffet style.
It was a break for, it was NCO club profits that were put into the Sunday banquets for members of the NCO club and families. Whether you were with or it was yours if you remember the NCO club, with or without your family, but they were really catering to families.
UNESCO Village.
Yeah, where we saw it.
Talk about UNESCO Village.
I just remember it.
You took us there several times.
Yeah, I did.
They had a house from every country.
Yeah.
The American one wasn't very good. It's just a little white frame house.
Yeah.
Looks like, boy, I'd hate to live there. But what else? You just remember going, not anything
Yeah, all
particular.
the different, it showed the customs of the different countries, how they lived, and it gave, they had homes that kind of in picture form, where you could just go in and see how they lived.
There was a place where we took a tram up the side of a mountain. We bought some walking sticks with little compasses in the handle. Talk about that place if you remember it.
Oh, that was quite a ride. Even give me the willies. Well, I went up in the mountains, just hanging on a cable.
Do you know where that place was?
I know it was in a certain area of Tokyo. It was real mountainous, but it was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah. I liked it. We went there once or twice. It wasn't something we did a lot. Twice. Yeah, I didn't remember doing it a lot, but I remember doing it. We used to just, with the Johnstons or the Sewells or both, we used to just take off in that 54 Plymouth out into the countryside. We'd go just about everywhere. Talk about that.
Went to Kamakura. We saw the Buddha. And didn't understand much of it, but we saw this Buddha that was that they actively worshipped over there. Buddha was very religious, had a very religious significance to the people of Japan, and we thought it was pretty remarkable to see ourselves.
Is that the Kamakura Buddha you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember going to the Kamakura Buddha. I remember we went up inside that thing.
yeah.
Kabuki? We ever go there? I didn't, but did you?
Seemed like I'd been there, yeah.
What was the other one? One of them was all men, and the other one, one was called the Kabuki, and one was called
My memory is not good enough to,
we went to the Tokyo Zoo. Any memories there?
yeah. It was pretty elaborate. We saw a lot of things there. And we went to a lot of drives out in the country, and Lily would have a picnic lunch, and we'd pick a spot that looked like it was out in the nowhere. We'd stop and start eating, and pretty quick we'd just be surrounded with little Japanese kids that just come out of the woodwork, come out of the trees. It seemed like you had no privacy where you thought you were alone. If you tried to eat at a picnic, the little Japanese would be standing there watching you. And we think, where in the world can the guy go for privacy?
Okay. Square Dance Club.
I remember one time we went to a Square Dance Club, and it was on a Sunday, and we didn't go to church. Instead, we went to the Square Dance. We belonged to a group of Square Dance, and this was a special occasion. And would you believe I had 3 flats on that Sunday? And I swore that I would spend the rest of my time going to church because I fixed flats and barely got home in time to go to work. As a result of sitting on that Sabbath day to be with the Square Dance Club instead of church, and I swore I'd never do it again.
You used to practice. I remember we used to go and practice red and white checks. You even made me a red and white check thing, and I'd go there.
Yeah,
How often did we practice?
once a week.
So you went weekly.
Yeah, we put on the show. We were good enough that we put on the show at Yokosuka in the officers club, and when I got up there in the Square Dance, a whole bunch of officers that had known me over the years, had come and said hello to me and told me how glad they were to see me. And I wouldn't even known that they were there had we not gone to Yokosuka to the officer club put on Square Day.
Mm-hmm. Now that Yokosuka is Navy, so there must have been Air Force nearby, like
Yeah,
Johnson maybe.
Johnson, yeah.
Johnson Air Force Base.
Yeah, Johnson, that's the one.
I was thinking because I'm wondering what all these Air Force officers are doing at a naval base.
Johnson.
Yeah, Tsugi was your Naval Air Station. Yokosuka was
That's
your naval
where
base.
Johnson is where
Sergeant Johnson was.
Gordon Johnson was.
We used to go over to see Sergeant Johnson. He cooked chili all day.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
Well, Sergeant Johnson was a good friend of mine. I knew him up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And he had taken some money out of the squadron fund that he intended to put back, but he had a few drinks and he lost some of it in the poker game. And his commanding officer knew he was short, but he would absolutely forbid anybody to check it till Johnson had a chance to replace it. And Johnson sold me a whole bunch of pretty good bargains to try to make up $150 to buy it, keep from going to jail. And he was eternally grateful for that.
We went to see her after he died. Her and Jesse.
Yeah.
After Jesse had his automobile accident, she actually had a premonition we were coming. Remember, she had a premonition that we were coming. Some
Yeah.
old friends. She had a dream that some old friends were going to come from the military, and she ended up. Not only did she start doing genealogical research after we'd been there and talked to her about genealogical research, but she started doing it with the LDS. She actually was doing, going with LDS people, doing the genealogical research.
Yeah.
After we went to see her, she's in San Antonio.
She's a good woman.
Yeah, really nice lady. The Nelsons, they were in Green Park, huh?
Yeah. But Emery, I knew him. He was one of my clerks at Travis Air Force Base.
And
I took him from PFC to staff sergeant, and when he was he was a technical sergeant in Japan, but I had taken, he made most of his rank working for Glenn Wheeler. A good man, good friend.
he had all girls, didn't he? About three girls.
Yeah, all girls.
We took those pictures of Cheryl over at his place, and Cheryl was just a baby.
Yeah.
Sewell's, Jim and Isla Sewell.
Well, I remember the church, and they had.
Was Jim a member of the church? I was
Uh,
thinking Isla was, but Jim
Isla
wasn't.
wasn't, but Jim wasn't.
Now, the Johnstons, they both were. What were the Johnstons? I know Doyle was their son that was my age, but what were the parents' names?
They were Mormon.
The Johnstons?
Oh,
I went to church with Doyle.
oh, you're talking about John Stun.
Stuns. We went to see them up in Roy, Utah.
Oh, yeah.
Years later.
I was thinking of Sergeant Johnson.
Yeah, no. His name was Jesse, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Johnstons, Mom was primary president, Ida Sewell was first counselor, and Betty Johnston, see, there it comes. If you think about it, they pop back. Betty Johnston was second counselor.
Right.
But what was his name, Mr. Johnson, Brother Johnston? Johnston. Daryl. You're right. As soon as you said it, I knew it was right. What about the Sewells?
So they were just good friends. Lily met her in church calling, in church duties, and they were friends there in the same, well, but they finally moved to Green Park, and we kind of lost track of them, but we checked up on the Sewells, and they had, in Japan, when we got home, they had divorced, and she remarried, and he was just still unmarried and was doing a little drinking.
I remember you and he putting away a good part of a bottle of Jim Beam one Christmas or something. We had them over, and you and he were drinking Jim Beam.
Yeah.
I remember that. Why do I remember that? You know, why do I remember that? He was still single, and
Drinking.
they had Darwin was their only child when they were out there. I think they had a little girl later.
They had divorced, and she had remarried again. He was single and drinking.
That's too bad. They were nice people.
Yeah. I asked him what happened. He said, well, it wasn't their fault, it was his.
Uh-huh. I remember one time we went over to B.J. Seaman's house. Remember him?
Yeah, he could skate like a, remember him? How good he could skate?
He was a funny little guy.
Yeah.
Reminded me, this is going to sound funny, but every time I saw him, I thought of Popeye the Sailor Man. There was a look to him that reminded me of Popeye the Sailor Man. Do you know why I'm saying that? I mean,
Yeah.
just remembering him.
He was a sharp little guy. And could skate like I didn't know. He put on the skates one time out there with them Japanese, and he was so good that the Japanese were just standing around watching him.
Uh-huh.
We made copies.
Don't move that. Don't move that.
That's the stuff I got too. Daniel, can you put some other magazines under there so I can move my stuff?
Okay. Tell me, when you went to Ishima and saw where Ernie Powell was killed,
No, I didn't see good.
you didn't go to Ishima? Dennis thought you did.
No.
Now, you did go to Nagoya, and you did go to Osaka. And you saw the Osaka Castle,
Yeah.
and you saw a bunch of other stuff. Tell me about it.
Well, they took me, they wanted me to, Sugihara was a good friend of mine, and he was a good friend of people that run that manufactured dry goods, clothes in Osaka, and they were very wealthy, these people. But one of the guys that worked for them said that they had the equipment to make fishing gear, and they wanted to ask Sugihara, said, who in the military do you know is smart enough that they could set up an outfit and sell it in the United States? And Sugihara said, well, the guy that do about anything he wants to would be Wheeler. Said there's a lot of talent. And so they watched me for, I didn't even know it, but they come to the outfit, visit Sugar, and they were just watching me work. And they decided, yeah, he's pretty enterprising fella. So they invited me to Osaka to come down and decide whether or not I wanted to be a representative for all that fishing gear and when we come back to the States. And I went down and looked it over. And while we're there, they took me to the Osaka Castle, and they took me all over Osaka to the different things to see. And they paid for all my expenses in the hotel while I was down there being interviewed by the members of the company. And I told them that I was a professional soldier, that I really didn't have the time to do that. And I wasn't about to quit the military at that late stage just to run a business. That I was going to ride it out for a career. I told them no, but I did see a lot of beautiful things in Osaka.
When was Nagoya on the same trip?
Yeah, Nagoya was on that same trip. Well, no, Nagoya, where I really got a view of Nagoya is I worked for a major, I can't even think of his name, but I worked for him at Shomei, and so they sent him down to Nagoya, and he called up Tachikai. He said he needed a good man to run this administration, and he said the guy that I'd give my right arm for is Master Sergeant Wheeler. And so they asked me if I would consider it. And so I said, well, I'm not real interested, but I would at least take a look. So I went down and took a look, and they had all of the most beautiful homes you ever saw that was occupied by colonels and generals. And they told me, said, now, if you'll come down here, this company that Shinra Mitsubishi was the company that I was with Shomei, and this company was Shinra Mitsubishi that down in Nagoya, and said they will fix up any of these houses that you want if you'll come down. And I could even have the general's quarters, but they had a little old bitty headquarters that didn't amount to a hill of beans, and there was just nothing there that challenged me. And I just took a look at it. It was like stepping out from the sergeant major to be a company clerk in a squadron, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's just too boring for me. So I turned it down. But while I was there, they did give me a tour of Nagoya to try to sell me on coming down, but I turned it down.
Mm-hmm. Does his name come back to you at all, the major? Well, you'd worked for him at Shaw before you transferred to Tachi.
Shomei, he was my first commander, Shomei.
And then when you went to Tachi and he went to Nagoya, he wanted you back.
He wanted me, he went to.
Were you still at Showa at that time, or?
He went from Shomei to Tachikawa. He got there, and I didn't go right to Tachikawa, but he told him, he said, you guys are really missing the bet if you don't get Wheeler down here to run this thing. Said this to him would be a picnic. And said this having all kinds of trouble. And I said, no, I'd rather stay at Showa. But anyhow, he planted the seed that finally got me pulled out of Showa May and put over the whole procurement area administration. But what was his name? I can see him. On the way down there, we were in his car, and the Japanese had a thing that if you went exceed the speed limit, it would trip that thing, and it would take your picture and register your speed. And he got a speed ticket taking me down to Nagoya. But
I thought Ernie Pyle was killed out by Mount Suribachi out in like Iwo Jima or someplace like that.
I've never been there.
But now he thought that you had gone to the place, Dennis, this is Dennis, thought you'd been to the place where Ernie Pyle was killed. Well, wasn't that near Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima?
Yeah, I think so.
But he kept talking about Ishima. Now, did you go to a place called Ishima? And it didn't have anything to do with Ernie Pyle, and he just got mixed up?
He got mixed up.
Okay, because I remember we had a slide. And you'd say, there's Mount Suribachi, and right over there on that little blip is where Ernie Pyle was killed, and that was Iwo Jima. And we didn't take those slides, somebody gave you those slides.
Yeah.
But my problem was, he told me you went to Ishima where Ernie Pyle was killed. I said, well, I'll ask you.
No, I didn't.
We went out to Fuchu where where the Doolittle Flyers were beheaded. You remember that? We went out to that park in Fuchu where the Doolittle Flyers were beheaded.
Yeah, beheaded.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Green Park. It was Green Park. And well, I took you out there to show you the spot where they had beheaded the Doolittle Flyers.
That happened at Green Park?
No, it wasn't Green Park.
I thought it was at Fuchu.
It was.
How do you spell Fuchu? I have no idea.
I don't know.
F-U-C-E-H-U doesn't sound right, does it? Seemed like it was longer. Like F-U-T-C-H-C-S-H-U or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I remember when I took you out there where they'd killed them.
I remember that.
Beautiful place.
Yeah, I thought how awful that was, since those poor men lost their head.
They just chopped off their heads out there at that park.
Tell me about Hashioji.
Hashioji.
I used to go down there and shop.
Oh,
We bought us
yeah.
hula hoops out there. Mom bought, I think that's where she bought her Narataki china, isn't it?
It's not only that, but that was a place where you could buy dry goods, cloth. And so she bought all the dresses and stuff. And she went, but we'd go down there, and they also had fish markets. But to me, I didn't like to get close to that fish market because you could smell them. But they sure didn't land off its business. But that was a place where the B-29 just ripped apart. That was a part of Tokyo that got hit the most. And they didn't like Americans down there on account of the B-29 bombing them so often.
Christmas devotional, it's this last, I think it goes to the church. Gifts of Christmas. And then the other one was, was similar title, I have this in the Bible. And again, the gospel.
I remember us going there several times though.
Yeah, we did go there.
What time is it, Renee?
I've got 10:51. There's little pieces that I play it, I have my favorite lesson with
King
the CD.
and his band, his music.
There it was a child.
Who?
You met a man by the name of King who did music.
I played this little piece from the movie. I taped it right off it.
Band.
Copied the movie. Oh, really? There was a
I think Sergeant King was his rank.
Oh, he's a boy from Georgia,
So I was just gonna copy it,
Uh-huh.
transcribe it.
and he wasn't a real bright young man, but he did play.
You're talking about gay.
You know, and
I'm talking about King, you're talking about gay.
scripture things.
Oh, I'm so very
Well, let's talk about Airman Gay then. I mean, if you're on Airman Gay, we'll talk about Airman Gay.
Airman Gay was sort of a slow young boy, wasn't extremely bright, but he played the wicked guitar, and he
That was my lesson.
he was trying to be an Elvis Presley, and he asked me to write him a song. I wrote him some dumb song, and
Pistol leg, blue jeans, red check shirt. Yeah, okay.
he really, every time I'd walk in the club and he's playing, he'd come up with a pistol leg and blue jeans.
Uh-huh. So he actually played at the club.
And I'm washing his feet with my
He played at the club, he was that good?
Yeah,
that he is the Savior.
he's a good musician.
And we looked that up online.
But I'd walk in the club and boy, the next song was pistol leg and blue jeans.
Shut the computer down, booted back up, and went back online, and then I couldn't get to a version of it that would give me 5 seconds. Too bad. So after he'd spent 10, 15 minutes, I'd spent another 10, 15 minutes. I just
There was also a musician by the name of King that actually had some success musically. You don't remember him, Sergeant King?
Yeah, he was weird though.
We'll leave him out of the history then.
He was weird. He found out if he didn't look decent and wore them coveralls and never washed them and didn't take his baths regular, and they kicked him out of the service for him. That's desirable.
Did it on the purpose.
He did it purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to waste my time on King.
Okay, let's talk about the old green wood frame house we lived in first at Showa.
Well, we I was able to get that because somebody at Show May knew this fella, and he knew that and Walkers lived in that same place.
Yeah.
And but anyhow,
When you say knew that fellow, you mean Takahashi, the landlord?
and so I went and talked to Takahashi, and he said, "Yeah, I could have it if I wanted it." And he gave me that first greenhouse that we lived in, but it was kind of pretty run down.
Talk about the white stucco. Oh, would you finish up on the green one first?
So, but anyhow, they come over and they put celluloid covering on the windows and made it semi-bearable for we had that chance to get in that other house,
When I first started working,
and where we stayed until we got base quarters.
I didn't have a green box, it was an extra.
But we lived next to the Walkers.
Oh, okay, and so if you go on all the regular.
You remember the Walkers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Airman Walker and then Roddy and Paul and Michael. Paul and I are the ones that rode on the back fenders of the bus.
Yeah.
Got in trouble. I played football with Roddy. I wasn't a very good football player there until a little later on.
There's a Mexican fellow that married a Japanese.
Airman Marino, Johnny was their son.
Yeah.
Then you had the black fellow, Airman Brown, who married a Japanese. You come into that compound, you came down that long, narrow thing. First was Airman Walker's house there. Then there was that house just straight in was a house there. The white stucco we had was behind it. As you came over here, there was a kind of a pagoda-looking thing that was abandoned the whole time we were there, multi-story. And we were in the green one, and then the Marinos were right here, and then the wall was right here, and then Club Katie was over there.
Yeah.
And I used to go to sleep to Club Katie, Sam Cooke and Fats Domino. I used to sleep to. I love that music. You know, I to this day I love black music. I grew up on it. Isn't that the strangest thing?
Yeah.
But you could hear that music playing.
Yeah.
When we were in the greenhouse, and somehow the White House was better insulated and couldn't hear it anymore. I missed it. I couldn't sleep hardly. I didn't have my black music. Oh, rhythm and blues. What a memory. Well, talk about the other house. Or talk about the Walkers. Talk about the Marinos or the Browns or anybody you want.
Walker, he was staff sergeant, but his wife had written a hot check. And boy, that's something you didn't do at Dutch County. He got busted in private.
Oh.
And she wasn't a very,
By private, you mean airman.
airman.
I remember him as Airman Walker.
Yeah, he got busted in staff sergeant because his wife wrote a hot check.
Mm.
You're supposed to have control of your family in the military.
Oh, I know. I know.
She wasn't much, to tell you the truth.
Now, those boys weren't his. She'd been married before, huh?
That's right.
Roddy was a good athlete. Paul was kind of a wild kid.
Yeah.
That's how I ended up on the back fender of a bus driving down the streets. My gosh, I could get killed. But you know how you are when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Anything about Marinos you want to remember, or anything about Brown, Airman Brown?
Every nice guys. I didn't know the Marino that good.
Remember, Airman Brown had a little red sports car.
Yeah, he was a pretty neat guy. Pretty clean kind of cut guy.
I remember we used to go up in that pagoda. It was nicely preserved. There was nothing wrong with it. Just empty. Now, when I say a pagoda, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a pagoda. It's just a little Japanese sort of two-story house that was between Airman Brown's and our greenhouse. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Anything else about that compound?
Well, we, they got Logston, who's a civil service guy. They knew where there was some nice carpets that were in the warehouse. And they said, if you want them, we'll see that you get them. And so all of a sudden they disappeared and we put them in the house. I was scared to death that someday I'd go to jail over it, but I never did.
Logston was the guy's name?
Yeah,
Civil service guy named Logston knew there was nice carpets, and so we got nice carpeting.
he had nice carpets in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Real thick, beautiful carpets. You remember them thick carpets?
No, I don't. I don't. What about Kobayashi's?
Kobayashi was the administrator for Show Me and Company, and he spoke English, and he was my direct liaison with the company. Anytime that I needed anything from them, I'd call him. Anything he needed from me, he called us, and we had a continuous flow of correspondence that went on between him and me, and we got to know each other. And we invited them to our house for dinner. You remember them?
Yeah, oh yeah, we had them over, and then we went over to their house.
And we went to their house for dinner.
Now that was Christmas when they came up.
Yeah,
Wasn't that when Mom had fallen and bruised her face?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Our house for dinner. Was that? I think that was Christmas. And their house, I think it was also at a holiday like that, but I can't remember which. Now, how long did you work at Showa?
But about a year.
And tell me anything more about working at Showa. We haven't talked too much about it.
Well,
Oh, and she really put that
it
on
was,
over.
it was good duty.
And the last time
Uh,
the last time
Before y'all came, I used to eat at the mess hall, and it only cost me my separate rations about $30 a month. I ate in the mess hall when you guys come, and
I don't know.
it
I
seemed to
don't
me
know,
like,
but I mean, she.
what I
she-
remember
you'll
most
be
about
crazy
Show
about
Me
it.
is rain.
And,
Rained a lot?
It rained, continued almost every day we got rain.
got her to come out to church.
I used to wonder how in the world
Just because she fights in with these, you know, like.
it could rain all day and all night,
And she
and
said, don't say
the
that.
next day could be clear and all the water would be gone.
Or you'll
Where
be, and you'll just say something.
it is soaked in that land.
Don't stop, that's got something in it, you know, sin in it, so you don't use that word. You know, and she'll pull it.
What else about Showa?
And like we said, state center.
Well, I became fast friends with all the people that worked for the Show Me contractors, and any time that I had anything that wanted done in the car, I had people that made cars that would fix it. Didn't cost me anything. But I had to be careful to not accept gifts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, work was okay, but gifts wasn't. Conflict of interest type thing.
Yeah.
Now, we went there with a 55, green 55 Ford. We ended up with a 54 Plymouth station wagon. Is that about right?
Right.
When they realigned the boundary, she became a do not contact here. And Glenn and I just, we enjoyed going over to see.
We took that Plymouth
And
Plymouth
yes,
to
but-
Florida.
Mhm.
Talked for him to come
Pulled a
to
trailer.
church a
Pulled
couple of
a
times.
trailer.
And they go-
There and back.
Where'd you get the trailer?
I bought the trailer from Ellis and Mary.
I mean,
Uh-huh.
the things that she comes up with are so disruptive that it was, it was.
Plymouth station wagon was just roomier for a big family. Is that about it?
Yeah,
And had more power to pull a trailer.
yeah.
She gave up, she said she was going back to basics. So she's given up everything. She had no refrigerator. She has a stove
So-
that she doesn't use, but it was tiny.
Okay, you moved to Tachi in terms of your
We
work.
told her that- and I think
Tell me
she
about your work
was-
at Tachikawa.
and
Well,
it was
they,
orange and an apple and a banana, everything like that. She lives on social
They
security.
just sent for me one day and said they want, said we've been told that you're a good man, we need you. You report to
And she looks for-
Tachikawa tomorrow.
she's
So
not-
that next day I was in Tachikawa, and I was the chief clerk of the Northern Air Material Area Pacific. copies of everything that come in.
So she walks.
We
and she
put
goes to
suspense
the
files
and
on everything that required action, and I had to make sure that nobody missed the deadline.
She shows us pictures of
I had to cut orders to send people all over Japan and commercial travel and military aircraft as well. And
She said, you know, if I don't sacrifice
I was just about a busy man.
she said, I have to sacrifice in order for my daughter to have me. So she said, I give up things so that she will have me.
Very busy.
And that's what older people
Yeah.
do.
And
And,
I gotta keep that in
I
mind.
trained a lot of people,
And my kids need to have nice things.
and I had some of the people trained well enough
you
that
see her now for a while.
whenever I left, they could all, they,
Little tiny kitchen and then
they could almost do the job.
now we live in one.
And they didn't know one thing about it when I walked in there.
Out in
Mhm.
living room part, you know, so when we go in to see her, she had one chair. So Glenn would sit in the chair and she and I would sit on the bed. And we'd
It was a mess when you walked
well,
in.
then she moved her
It was a
bed,
mess.
the bed back into the
I
bed.
straightened it out,
The last time we were there.
trained
she had
people to do it,
In the living room and she got up.
and I got
sewing machine and put-
special recognition for my work there.
And she just,
In what form?
I just feel really, really.
Uh,
sorry for her.
Yeah,
And that she's that.
uh,
Yeah, and she said
letters
she-
of appreciation.
She said that's the last thing that I said.
And,
"Please don't do that. You need
Where's
to
she
have
gonna live?
it was-
Personal,
oh,
personal thank yous from colonels all over the place that knew me.
No, through her phone, and I think she.
They said that I turned the place around completely.
And she talks about her daughter will come over and bring her, what does she call her, the first day.
You went to, they had a thing where all of these fireworks companies were competing for the contracts. And so they were all there and they just put off fireworks all night.
Yeah,
Tell me about that. How did you obviously got invited, somebody had to invite you, it was a very special thing. What happened?
well, I was invited to go out there and to see it and given special tickets to do it. And I just went out. I have never seen such fireworks in all my life. Some of the best fireworks that I've ever seen here in the United States wouldn't even hold a light for what I saw in Tokyo. But those people were competing not for markets in Tokyo, but markets all over the world, and a lot of the stuff that is shot over here in our 4th of July celebration come from Tokyo. But you only see a small fraction of what they displayed at that fireworks.
Now, how did you end up getting special tickets? What was your end? You had to have some special end to get those tickets.
Mr. Kobayashi got me through the Shoei aircraft industry.
As a matter of fact, she was baptized.
Knowing Kobayashi was what did it.
But because she doesn't walk real well, I think she.
Tell me about Mr. Kobayashi.
Fine gentleman, very, very honest, very fair, very efficient, genuinely good people.
And the paramedics, as they were taking her.
Tell me more about him. I mean, what did you do?
Well, he did all the administration, the front office work. He was the first guy you talked to before when you talked to him, there was only one way to go, and that was further upstairs.
His housekeeper comes in,
He was,
and this is, I'm sure, through.
he was the level that, of the public that come into the door. But, to see anybody bigger than him, you had to go through him to see him.
Give me a job title and industry for Kobayashi.
And she said her sister, she had a sister that was
Probably,
How would you put it? I mean, for the history, I got to put what he, you know. How would you best put it?
executive officer for executive officer for the aircraft, show aircraft industry.
first of January, every Monday, the first Monday in January. She said,
Now, I went over to see you on the base a number of times, and when I did, not too far from your office, right there next to your office, they had a bunch of cars. What were those cars? They were like Japanese cars.
They made them, that was just another part of aircraft, show aircraft industries made automobiles also.
She'd like to have somebody.
What was the connection between the military and Showa Aircraft Industries?
They had a contract to repair all
Lady and.
vehicles, all automobiles,
The two of them, they're close together. And I said.
and helicopters,
I said to.
and,
I said, now, do you know Dolores Martin? And she said, well, she lived, you know,
and they did,
She said, yes. I said, yes, she does. And she said,
Oh.
"She came to my house once and I asked her to go." And so I wrote her. Yeah.
they did fighter aircraft too, but they worked on mostly vehicles and cars, and the helicopters,
And she
and, I forgot now what category of plane that they worked on, but it was one category.
you know, takes a.
Okay, and
And she'll pick up something that has seen in it and she,
oh yeah,
you know, and.
Dennis was troubled by my account of your mission,
Because it's got,
that 13th mission.
you know, and you know.
Asherleben or whatever it was that you were bombing.
And my open toe
He said, well, Phil, you didn't make it clear when they were bumped out of formation
No, and she asked me.
and they came across
I
this.
didn't,
And I had
we didn't
this on, so she.
go down over Asherleben.
Mhm.
Our manual controls was jimmied,
Uh-huh.
and we fought, wrestled with them for a long time before.
Now, you had gone, you'd hit the target, and you were returning when you got, or you were over the target when you got hit.
But we didn't immediately go into a dive. We jockeyed that plane on manual controls till we got to almost out of there before they give way.
So you actually had hit the target and you were hit while you were hitting the target, were on your way back, and for quite a long time you were able to maintain, and then they went kaput.
Well,
That's how it happened. But you'd already hit the target.
we'd already hit the
Yeah,
target.
because he says, Phil, you didn't make that. You know, it's a military mission. You got to have the exact details. You know, Dennis.
Well, that didn't happen. We didn't go into that nose dive until we were almost leaving the enemy coast. But we got it over Asherleben. It sounded like, I read it the other day, that it sounded like it
Happened out by the channel.
well, it did happen out by the channel.
As far as you going down, but it didn't. You didn't get hit out by the channel.
No, we got hit at Asherleben
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, well, he picked that up, and he said, Phil, this is an incomplete story. You got it. I told him, I says, I want you to critique this thing. I want to get it right. And so if something's wrong with it, you tell me what's wrong with it. We'll fix it.
I did that, and he's right on that.
You know, and that's exactly what I needed. I needed another set of eyes to get the story right. And he was, bless his heart, he got on there. He says, here's the problem. So I said, I'll fix it. Here's another one. I'll fix it. Here's another one. I'll fix it.
That was one.
Yeah, and he wanted me to fix that. Now,
didn't need to do.
Orders came across your desk to go to England.
And he said.
Did you initiate those, or were you just ordered to England? He said, did Dad initiate that? He says, I can just imagine Dad wanting to get into the fight, and he says, I'll bet he manipulated or asked for orders for England. Did he get the orders, or did he ask for the orders? And he wanted to know the difference.
And so they said.
It's on page 13, where it says, well, I guess July 1942, I got orders to England.
I didn't put in for it, I got 'em.
Okay, because he wanted to know. And he felt like it,
Yeah,
see, he thought, well, you know what?
yeah. Was he that same?
He said, I'll bet he manipulated that, I'll bet he put in for that, I'll bet he wanted that, I'll bet he was spoiling to get in the fight. And I said, I'll ask him.
I wasn't wanting to get in the fight then.
I wanted something kind of.
Yeah, here it is, page 21. Had they done the mission, or were they returning? There it is. I asked it before I got to page 9, page 11, page 13, page 21. This was, he'd made his margin notes on those pages. What's going on these pages?
I have the sheet.
Okay. Okay, let's see.
There's one song in there. It's called
Western Shakespeare, Lincoln County Courthouse, Tombstone, Tularosa, Old Guy in the Canyon with the Boots, Tularosa, Women's Club where the church was, No Font, NCO Club in Japan, Nagoya, Osaka, Iishima, which you didn't really go to. You saw parades in Nagoya, huh?
Yeah,
Ceremonial parades.
yeah.
Do you remember what they were celebrating?
I don't know, but they had them weird looking dragon things that they put on the street. I think they're celebrating their Erie, you know.
Yeah, kind of eerie celebration. I remember the first day Dennis and I were there, they were doing some Shinto thing where they were carrying a pagoda through the streets. Drunk with sake, they were just sakeing up and just staggering through the streets carrying that pagoda. Dennis and I were new in country. They offer us this little cup of stuff. We don't know what it is. Find out it's liquor, sake. Oh, golly. Oh, boy. Okay, now, we're going to stop for today. Tomorrow, let me give you an idea what I want to get into a little bit. I want to get into, when we were in Patrick, fishing over in that reservoir, fishing on the Indian River, Lunana River, what you were doing in Patrick. He liked Patrick. Thought I'd done a pretty good job there. He was pleased with Patrick. So but I just want to get into some of those details.
Okay.
A little more detail about just, well, maybe not. I mean, you worked at the BOQ, and that's what you did, so I think I've got that. Then I want to get into a little bit more when you worked at Ontario, when you worked at Chaffee, when you, and then the driving schools that you worked for. And just at the time Mom was dying. I think that ought to be in there, going through that, painful though it is. It's part of your life. And then getting married again, and then we need to talk more about that mission. I mean, I've got those wonderful letters. You read them. They're terrific. They really tell a lot about the mission. But more about the mission.
I'll get her in here with me on the mission.
Yeah, your lung cancer. I remember sitting by the bed when you got your lung cancer. I want to ask you a little bit about your father and mother, your memories of them. They don't have to be real long because I've got histories of them, but I do want a paragraph on each. The work you did at Edwards. You worked for Colonel Vostell, but he says no, it's not enough, not enough. Your impressions of Mr. Housel.
Oh, Howard was the greatest man.
Well, that ought to be in there. And then the last thing that we haven't dealt with so far, and I'm going to put that you got the first charter for the Boy Scouts, and we've talked about that a little bit today already. What was the name of that boy who darn near killed that cow trying to write it?
I see Lisa sitting.
Oh, man. Oh,
He was a wild kid. He was a wild kid anyway.
yeah.
And then the other thing, when you were an Elders Quorum president, high priest group leader, when you were a counselor in the bishopric, your religious experiences. And then we can figure, okay, we've got a history that we can kind of call it Dad's history. And then anytime you come back to it, anytime you have anything to add, you just add it and we'll put it on the disc. But we will have the skeleton will be built.
Okay.
And it's just today and tomorrow we will finish the skeleton.
Okay, that's
And then the rest of your life, anytime you want to, well, you know, here's something I want in there, you just let me know, and we'll put it in there. And you will have a life history of
okay.
Percy, no, Glenn Preston Wheeler.
Oh, that Percy, didn't I?
You know, I didn't even mention that you were Percy, except it's in the 1920 census.
Yeah.
No, I want to talk to him just a little bit more. I didn't even mention it, except that it's in the 1920 census. Now, do you want to mention that at all? That, you know, that, just don't even want it in there.
No,
You were Glenn the day you were born. You made a mistake in the 1920 census.
yeah, they did. My mom and dad didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. But you know, the one thing we miss out by doing that is the fights. I mean, you had to fight a boy named Sue type of fights.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss that. You're going to lose that. But you're willing to lose that just to get rid of that Percy. Okay, we'll do it.
Right.
Okay. We'll do it. Danny, you can turn it off now.
All right. 1930.